Hello and welcome to coverage of the semifinals here at GPDC. Marie Bartholdi in the booth, joined by Jacob Van Lunen. Two teams pairing off here, Oliver Tu, Shahar Shenhar, and Andre Strosky versus Paulo Vitor Damaderosa, Eric Froelich, and Ben Stark. A team of mono Hall of Famers. Facing off against some young guns here. Let's start at Table C. Ben Stark versus Andre Strosky. We saw both of them draft. Ben Stark had a red-green, aggressive, trick-oriented deck with lots of Saproling migrations. Andre Strosky, not a lot of creatures in his draft, but he did draft blue-white. Lucky to find one here. Tetsuko Umezawa, Fugitive, his first play of the game.
You know, we've talked a lot about this weekend about 1/3s in this limited format, and I think Tetsuko is just about the best turn 2 play that Andre could have against a deck like Ben's. Ben is going to be making a lot of 1/1s, and that 1/3 body is going to be really powerful for Andre.
Corrosive Ooze, the play here for Ben Stark. Just a 2/2. Can come in handy if you find it yourself across the table from an equipment. We do know that Strosky at least drafted some of those. Not sure if they ended up in his final build. Davenant Trapper here, the follow-up play, a card that has overperformed for me, for sure.
And I think the Trapper is at its best in these blue-white style decks. Perhaps white-red is another very strong home for the Trapper.
Back over to Ben Stark. Land drop number 3 here. Song of Freyalise. And we're going to tap for mana. Saproling Migration, number 1 here from Stark. We're going to make 2 Saproling creature tokens. And Song of Freyalise, we've talked about it all weekend, can be absolutely backbreaking.
Yeah, this is one of the absolute best uncommons in the set. We're going to see Ben have the ability to completely unload his hand with the second chapter of Song of Freyalise, now that he has 3 creatures and those 3 lands, maybe a 4th on the following turn. That's going to mean he's going to have access to 6 or 7 mana. And then on the following turn, it's going to produce tons and tons of power and give him just an absolutely free attack.
Tetsuko coming in unblockable. Davenant Trapper also swinging into the red zone. Blink of an Eye will deal with one of these Saproling creature tokens. Andre Strosky draws another copy, I believe, of that kicked Blink.
And normally you wouldn't want to be that aggressive with your Blink of an Eye, but because of the song, that's going to deny Ben both mana and additional power once he hits the 3rd chapter of the Song of Freyalise. So I like that play a lot from Andre in that spot.
Handy to have another one in hand as well as we inch forward on these chapters here of the song.
Yeah, Andre does have 2 copies of Blink of an Eye in his deck. He drew both of them in this game. Those are pretty good against tokens.
All right, we're in Chapter 2 here, the Song of Freyalise. Ben Stark, Rampaging Cyclops, Ancient Animus here to take down the Davenant Trapper. So setting himself up to distribute 3 counters next turn for Chapter 3. And that Trapper, just nothing you really want to ever be playing against if possible. Especially in blue-white.
And Ben wants to make sure that he is ahead on the board when the song hits its final chapter.
Divination here from Strosky, and this is really interesting as opposed to leaving Blink of an Eye up or something like that.
Yeah, I think Ben's almost certainly going to be very happy to see Divination from Andre here.
Divination, a card that is not great in every format, but people love it here in Dominaria. And we are going to have the opportunity to have 2 mana open, so we could cast an unkicked Blink, potentially. Also a Seal Away in Strosky's hand. So that's the plan.
Yeah, the Song of Freyalise, though, it gives creatures vigilance, right? So.
All right, so there's the free roll attack from Song of Freyalise. You're right, Sanambo. Tetsuko just has to block one, and there's Valduck from Ben Stark.
And normally you're not happy to see Divination from your opponent in this format, but when you're trying to be as aggressive as Ben is, I think that he's pretty happy that Andre's using that card in his early turns. Usually when somebody has a card like Divination, they want to have it played as one of the later cards that they play so they can refill after they've already played what they've drawn initially.
Valduck, Keeper of the Flame, and Ben Stark has just pulled ahead here. That Song of Fraley's making his team huge. And Andre Strosky, just Tetsuko on the table. We do know about the Seal Away in hand as well as the second blink of an eye.
Yeah, Ben, definitely aware of the number of instants that are available for Andre.
Okay, so we're attacking in with Valduck, the Corrosive Ooze, and the Rampaging Cyclops. Look at Valduck on the right side of your screen there. Ben did draft a number of equipment, some short swords, which would be excellent, of course, with Valduck.
Yeah, he has a pair of short swords and a jousting lance.
And here's that blink of an eye. Corrosive Ooze back to Ben Stark's hand. Strosky will draw a card and Seal Away here to deal with the Cyclops. So not too bad, all things considered.
Yeah, Andre's doing a really good job of staving off. He has drawn a lot of lands this game, but now with a Blessed Light in hand, and looks like he's also drawn an Academy Drake. I think Andre could find himself getting right back into this game on this turn right now.
Land number 7 here for Strosky. We're going to kick this Academy Drake. 4/4 flyer back over to Stark. Fiery Intervention, his basically one removal spell in the deck other than that Ancient Animus, able to take it down. Swings in. Back over to Strosky, down to 4.
Yeah, now Strosky in a pretty dangerous situation. We know that Ben picked up a lot of pump spells over the course of that draft. He also has a Skizzik, so...
That's right.
A number of ways that Ben can add a lot of power to his board very quickly here.
Icy Manipulator for Strosky, just an absolute all-star, but is it enough? Short Sword. Put it on the Valduck. I'm going to get a free 3/1. And Strosky scoops him on up. Game 1 here, going to Ben Stark.
I was actually quite impressed with Andre's ability to contend in that game, though. I mean, he was up against a Song of Fraley's into a Saproling Migration on the same turn, and he really managed to work his way through that without seemingly being completely overwhelmed. So I think if he could handle that type of draw that well, it certainly bodes well for him in the coming games, though I still think Ben is at an advantage in this matchup.
All right, an update there. Eric Froelich and Paulo Vitor Dambadorosa all win their game 1s here in the semifinals. So Tu, Shenhar, and Strosky, their backs are up against the wall. They have got to win here coming up in these next games.
Yeah, they're all Hall of Famers, and they're in the Hall of Fame for a reason.
Yeah, I think Paulo has something entirely crazy about how many GP top 8s he has on his resume. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's PT top 8s.
Oh, PT top 8s. Yeah, it's just nuts.
It's just disgusting.
And you can see there Froelich kind of conferring with Stark about what's going on since this is a team event. But, you know, you talk about morale and how your team is feeling at this point in the tournament, and when you're all down a game, it's got to do something psychologically. I'm going to say it's not going to do nothing.
I mean, these are guys who are adamant professionals. Even though they're young, they have been at the top tables at Magic tournaments many times before. They've all lost game 1s and come back to win very big matches that have ended up leading to them top 8ing tournaments, lead to them making it to the semifinals or finals or even winning a tournament. Even though they're in a rough situation here, and I'm sure it's in their head, these are people who are able to handle it. And that's part of becoming a strong Magic player is, you know, being able to overcome that feeling of helplessness.
By the way, the guy watching the match over there, not George R.R. Martin, as some have surmised. We can't tell him to finish Book 7. That's Eric's dad watching, as he's from this area, which is pretty cool. Dad coming out to the tournament, watching the top 4.
That's great. I love that. If you're a parent, be supportive of the thing your children love.
What does your daughter love?
She loves to dance.
Nice.
She's about dancing.
You're gonna be
She
a
likes
dance
dogs. Yeah, I'm getting into it.
I can see you filling that role very nicely, JVL. Teams shuffling up and sideboarding here, and because this is a team draft, the teams did get a chance to confirm and talk with each other about what the other players around them were getting past. Let's check in here on Table A for game number 2. Paulo Vitor Damadurosa, ranked 10th in the world versus Oliver 2. Blood Tallow Candle in play for PV DDR. Keldon Overseer here as well. Oliver 2, Pegasus Courser, and a Knight of Malice. 2 very good 2 and 3 drops. Black-White.
Yeah, Black-White tends to be a pile of very powerful cards when you play with it in this draft format. I've definitely won some drafts playing Black-White, and my decks weren't necessarily synergistic, but I had a lot of really good Legends and removal spells.
Black-White is Legendary Matters. Wow, I haven't seen this card in an age. Cabal Evangel here. Just a 2-2 for 2, what we call a bear in the business here from Oliver 2.
And this is a card that you're not going to see in many high-power draft or sealed decks, but when you're playing a team draft, you have to remember there are a lot less packs being opened at the table. The power level of everybody's deck is going to be reduced, and a lot of the time you're using your picks to weaken the power level of your opponent's decks. So a card like Cabal Evangel, this is a very defensible body when you're playing a team draft.
Team drafts have the tendency on the overall to be weaker than a normal draft. Certainly weaker than a team sealed pool.
I like the flavor text on Cabal Evangel also.
I mean, it's intense.
I like that on Dominaria there are like evangelicals for Bells and Lock.
For demons.
Yeah.
Goblin Barrage here will take down the Pegasus Courser. So Paulo showing respect for the power of that Pegasus to send other cards into the air. But we can't attack yet. That Knight of Malice has first strike. So back over to 2. Taps 3 for a Sergeant at Arms. Swings in. We'll do a trade here, the Evangel for the Keldon Overseer. And there was a black splash. Eviscerate takes down Knight of Malice.
And currently, Oliver, too, miss quite a few land drops, but taking advantage here of being aggressive, getting Paulo to use a lot of removal spells that are more expensive than the threats he's using them on.
Valid Omnivore here for 2. Added to the battlefield, a card that has been absolutely impressive all weekend.
Yeah, we've talked about this since the beginning of day one. This is a card that I think is the...
Is this the MVP of the weekend?
I think it is. This is certainly the card that, for me, has improved the most in my pick order list since I first began drafting the set.
And Paulo knows it. Blood Tallow Candle cracked. Omnivore down. Divest here from Oliver 2. Wow, able to nap a Cold Water Snapper, which would have been pretty good.
Yeah, it would have been a gigantic speed bump. Or wall, even.
Don't call a turtle a speed bump, sad face. Weight of memory here from Paulo. And he's going to mill himself 3, some good ones, into the bin. Fire Fist Adept and a cast down. Vidalian Arcanist here on the table. Just a 1/3, but can tap to help you cast your instants and sorceries. Arvad the Cursed for 2. And does 2 have a legendary sorcery in hand? I think he does. I think he's got Yawgmoth's Vile Offering.
We've seen that card cast a few times this weekend. A 2-for-1, just almost immediately.
But Caligo's Skin Witch is kicked, and that is going to head right to the graveyard. Wow.
That's one of my favorites in the set. Calico Skin Witch.
That feels so good when they've just got to discard it. Beautiful.
It always times itself so well also. Like they just have their best cards left in their hand.
Oh yeah, I mean like you said, Dominaria, the cards, how good they are increases really dramatically with how much mana they cost. Back over to Paulo here. He's got an Adeliza Cinderwind pulled to the front. An Eviscerate still in hand. All right, she's going to come down. Hasty 2-2. Eviscerate here on Arvad the Cursed. Down goes Arvad. In comes Adeliz. With the pump off of the Eviscerate. Voltaic Servant here for 2.
Yeah, the Voltaic Servant may seem odd in an aggressive deck like 2's, but 2 also has Traxos, Scourge of Krug.
Oh, okay.
Which combos very nicely with the Voltaic Servant there.
Skittering Surveyor for Paulo. There's a look at Traxos. So at least 2 decks potentially running Traxos here at this table, because we did see Stark drafted as well. Whisper, Blood Liturgist here for DeRosa. Whisper, one of these creatures that, best in a green deck, giving you lots of saplings to sacrifice to bring cards back from your graveyard, give yourself kind of an inevitability. But hey, I mean, you could just sacrifice a Surveyor and an Arcanist.
I mean, when you're on defense, it's always reasonable. When your opponent's attacking with multiple creatures, you can often block with some of your creatures and then get something better back from your graveyard in the process.
Adeliz continuing to get in there. Baird, Steward of Argive, the play last turn from 2. 2-4 Vigilant. Requires you to pay the tax to attack. And a Dreadshade here for Paulo.
The Dreadshade has threat of activation, such a way that can force the opponent to block.
Remember, the team of DeRosa, Frolik, and Stark are all up a game over to Shenhar and Strosky. Team drafting is like nothing else that you see normally in your Magic life. Really love to get the chance to see it here on stream. Adeliz and Dreadshade coming on in. Voltaic Servant just has to chump the Dreadshade. Back over to 2. Right of Bells and Lock here for 2. All right, Chapter 1, make 2 clerics.
Oliver just has to get to that point where he's going to make this demon. Paulo has 6 life remaining.
Yep.
That demon does have 6 power. It's in the air. Paul only has 1 flyer on his side of the table.
And he's already used 2 Eviscerates on other creatures from 2. So this demon could be a problem here for Paulo.
2 with a Bells and Lock theme deck. Unfortunately, no Demon Lord.
Sad.
It's the top end.
Well, I mean, Corey took them all earlier in Team Sealed.
Yeah.
He had 2 in his build. All right, here we see that Whisper activation we were musing about earlier. We're going to sacrifice the Surveyor and the Arcanist to bring back the Cold Water Snapper. Paulo here at just 6 life has to be very careful with attacks. Separating the swamps out, potentially to be able to pump that Dreadshade.
Yeah, Paul's in an interesting situation because he needs to be very careful, but at the same time, he also needs to remain very aggressive. Because if he lets the game get to the point where Oliver is able to make that demon and then get another untap step and attack with it, he's going to be in a really rough spot.
The Demon, though, doesn't come without a cost. If Paulo can chip away here at 2's creatures and force him to block, that Demon's going to deal 6 to 2.
That's absolutely true. 2 doesn't have any creatures remaining to sacrifice. It could end up being lethal.
All right, Cinderwind. Aldiz the Cinderwind gets in. Coldwater Snapper and the Dreadshade. 2 Cleric tokens jump in front on the chump. Chapter 2, they come right back.
The about to lose the game graveyard check.
Yep. What did you play again?
Just want to make sure. Of course, it's the final game of the match. And Oliver, still has a shot here.
All right, update from Table B. Eric Froelich, 2-0 Shahar Shenhar. So DeRosa, Froelich, and Stark on their way here to a win, 0-0-0 in the columns of 2, Shenhar and Strosky. So 2 needs to win this game to keep the team alive. Whisper activation here. The Firefist Adept comes in and shoots down a Cleric token. Blocks the Sergeant at Arms. All right, back over to PVDDR.
Yeah, Oliver now going to get his 6/6 Demon the very next turn. Does have to block the Dreadshade on this turn. Will fall down to just 2 life. I believe he only has lands in hand.
All right, we have a correction here. You see that one now next to Oliver 2's name. It was inputted incorrectly. He did actually manage to win game 1 here against Paulo. So they do have a win in their column. The Mirari conjecture here for Paulo. Let's take a look. Return target instant card from your graveyard to your hand. Cast down. Comes on back. That obviously changes a lot. The game count changed, so we might have to move to table C, as it could be the deciding game there. Here we go, jumping into things, and there is plenty of action on the table here. Ben Stark versus Andre Strosky. Well, a lot going on. We've got lots of saplings on the table for Stark. Valduk, Halar, 3 counters.
It looks like there's been a lot of kicker happening. We see some sapling migrations and a Gift of Growth there at the top of the screen.
Meanwhile, on Strosky's side of the board, we do have a 4/4 Flying Drake, Benomish Marshal in play, and a Forebear's Blade. Life total is currently 4 for Stark to 10 to Strosky. Another sapling migration here, kicked once again. Wow, 4 counters on Halar. 4 to Andre's face.
That is painful.
That's awesome. I've never seen Halar with 4 counters.
Neither have I. It's the right time to do it. Top 4 of a Grand Prix.
And just tons of saplings to work here for Stark.
Yeah, it's getting that stage of the game where Ben can start counting how many creatures are on the other side of the table and how many creatures are on his side of the table, and doing some subtraction and figuring out whether or not it's lethal. So the trample on Halar could become relevant.
That's right, Halar does have trample. Okay, so we are tied at 1 game apiece up on table A. Paulo has 1 win, 2-1 win. Eric Froelich 2-0 Shahar Shenhar. Down here on table C, if Ben Stark wins this, it is all over. And his team will advance to the finals. We just want to be sure we are showing you what could be a deciding game.
Yeah, if these life totals are correct here, then Ben being at 4, Andre at 6. Andre has a lethal flyer. To see whether or not Ben has some way to interact here.
All right, Strosky getting in here with Sergeant at Arms. And the Drake pierced the sky here. Healing Grace from Strosky. Ben needs to read that card. I have yet to see it cast. Let's take a look. Prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn by a source of your choice. You gain 3 life.
Yeah, and normally that wouldn't be good enough because the Academy Drake was a 4/4 and the Pierce deals 7 damage. But because the Benelish Marshal was on the battlefield, that Academy Drake was a 5/5. So the Pierce Sky would deal 7 damage to it, but 3 of that damage would be prevented, and the Drake would have 4 damage on it and be exactly large enough to survive and deal lethal damage to Ben.
Incredible. Healing Grace. Who would have thought? All tied up here on table C as well. So Tu, Shinhar, and Strosky fighting their way back in here. Let's head over to table 1. Once again, a blood tallow candle out for PVDDR. Oliver 2, black, white, Sergeant at Arms. The first play of the game for him. Dreadshade here. Nice on turn 4 for Paulo. Icy Manipulator for Oliver 2. One of the best cards in the set.
And just threat of activation from the Dreadshade means that Paulo will be happily attacking with that as long as he's able to, though Oliver will likely be freezing it down in short order.
Dreadshade here can attack with no fear. In it comes to the red zone, and we are going to pump it 3 times. Take 6.
And Oliver's quite happy to see Paulo use all of his mana to just pump a Dreadshade. It means that Paulo doesn't have some way to advance his board state, and Oliver can get right back in this.
All right, Yargle, welcome to the table. The Yarg Father is here for Oliver 2. Come on down, Yarg Daddy.
A frog spirit.
Yeah, man.
I don't understand how it eats, the shape of its mouth.
I don't know if spirits need to eat. He does look hungry, though. He is a glutton. Maybe he feasts on souls.
Yeah, Rashad points out that Yargle is putting something into its mouth in the picture.
All right, fine. Ghosts gotta eat, I guess. Dreadshade in. Eviscerate takes care of Yargle. How do you eviscerate a spirit? Yet again, flavor questions. Okay, no play there from Oliver. Back over to Paulo. Skin Witch here just for 2. Paulo missing some land drops here.
And time again this week, and we've talked about how important it is to hit your lands in this limited format. How even when you're seemingly flooded, you almost always have something to do with your mana.
Cabal Evangel here for Oliver 2. 2 is 2/2 for 2.
In the last game, we saw Cabal Evangel force a trade with something that costs more mana.
Yeah, Paulo just has passed the turn back over to Oliver here. Taps down the Dreadshade, end of turn. Skin Witch can safely block the Evangel. He's going to take 2 from the Sergeant at Arms. Guardians of Koilos here for Oliver 2, 4/4. Dreadshade tapped down once again. Calgo Skin Witch number 2 for Paulo. Just cast for 2. We can't kick the Skin Witch here. Not enough mana. Dark Bargain for 2. Ooh, he hit something nice here. Dominant Trapper. We're just going to send a land to the bin and write a Belzenlock.
It looks like Oliver's going to be able to run away with this one. It'll all come down to Ben Stark and Andre Strosky, who we watched draft.
Wow. All right, the Guardians coming in here 4-4. Yeah, and Paulo off his third color of mana as well. He does have blue in the deck. Double block here with the Skin Witch. Means just one will die.
I imagine Paulo has some way to finish it off. Perhaps a way to deal 2 damage or shrink the Guardian. Or probably 2 damage.
Right, a Bells and Lock here. Yep, Shivan Fire indeed. From Paulo will take care of the Guardian, but that right, pretty scary, and a Blood Tallow Candle is not going to be good enough to deal with a 6/6 demon that's waiting in the wings. No 5th mana either. Chapter 2, 2 more Clerics. It looks like Oliver 2 is just running over Paulo here in this game. Davnon Trapper. And Baird, Steward of Argive. Taps down the Skin Witch. Oliver in for another 4. Potentially fungal infection here. The old fungal infection, make a sapling and block for Paulo.
Yeah, a nice play that gives the ability to kill 2 toughness attackers with fungal infection.
Icy Manipulator, however, has something to say about that and taps it down.
It means Paulo does have an opportunity to attack here, but there's really no good attack when your opponent has so many creatures in play.
All right, here we go. Chapter 3, the Rite of Bells and Lock. The Clerics have sung the song in their spooky little skull choir, and the 6/6 demon is here. Dice on the top of 2's deck to remind himself to sacrifice a creature, take 6. Oof. Another fantastic saga here. The Eldest Reborn for 2. Forcing a sacrifice from Paulo. I don't think there's absolutely any way on earth Paulo can get back into this game.
Yeah, I mean, just card after card that Oliver is playing here is just super high power level.
And there is the handshake. Oliver 2 ties things up here. 2-1 over Paulo Vitor Damaderosa. That means it is all up to Table C. Ben Stark versus Andre Strosky. We saw them both draft Ben Stark's red-green kicker deck versus Strosky's blue-white deck. And there was the handshake. I can't tell what happened. We came in just as it was ending.
I believe Ben won.
And indeed he did. Ben Stark 2-1 over Andre Strosky. Paulo Vitor Damaderosa, Eric Froelich, and Ben Stark advancing on to the finals here at Grand Prix DC over to Shenhar and Strosky, who put together one heck of a run here at this tournament. So congratulations to them as well. Wow, that was some cool stuff we got to see down there, and came in unfortunately right at the last minute as Ben Stark was winning, but really neat stuff we saw.
Yeah, I kind of wish we got to see that last game there because, we tuned in for 1 second. We saw a Valduck with a jousting lance on it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Andre scooping up his cards. It's probably a pretty exciting draw for Ben.
All right, we've got more Magic from our semis coming up after this message. back to coverage of GPDC. Marie Bertholdi, JVL in the booth here for Sunday Night Magic. More semifinal action. And we got the team of Stark, Froelich, and Paulo Vitor Damadurosa advancing to the finals. And, we watched Stark draft, and you, JVL, were not particularly impressed with his deck. Red-green, you gave it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I did not think it was a particularly strong deck. I thought that if he didn't draw one of his very few removal spells, there were a lot of things that would just brick wall him and prevent him from having a chance at victory. And, in Game 1, had he not drawn both of his removal spells, the Ancient Animants and the Fiery Confluence, I think that would have been a really hard game for him to win. And, obviously, his top-end draws, the Song of Freyalise draws, are going to be very, very powerful. But considering the decks that I've had in this format, the decks I've seen other people have when they've drafted in this format, particularly I think the only deck I'd ever say was a 10 out of 10 in the history of decks I've seen drafted would be Ben Stark's green-black deck that he drafted for a video on channelfireball.com. If you go back and watch that, that's definitely a 10 out of 10. I don't know. The deck that he drafted this time did not impress me. I think it was definitely better than his opponent's deck. I said at the beginning of the match.
Right.
And you only need to win one when you're in the top 4 of one of these GPs.
That's right.
And it worked out.
Team drafts overall, lower power level on the drafts.
Oh, absolutely.
Normally.
Yeah. It's rare you're going to have like a Scream River of a deck when you're drafting with 6 people at the table, especially when the people around you are trying to make your deck worse.
All right, well, let's take a look at our other semifinal. Team of Andrew Tenjum, Petter Sahurik, and Peter Engram versus Brad Nelson, Brian Branduin, and Martin Mueller. Green-white here for Ingram. Corrosive Ooze in play. Memorial to Genius and an Island for Martin as we kick things off. Sarah Disciple added to the table for Peter. And let's make that 2. Well, we tried. Syncopate has something to say about that from Mueller.
Peter looks to have a really aggressive deck here, looking over his list. Green-white is one of the only aggressive decks I've really had a lot of success with in this draft format. I don't know how often you've drafted it, but when I'm white, I tend to be more aggressive, and I don't love aggressive decks in this format, but green-white seems to be a place where I'm able to go wide, use cards like Charge, use cards like Wild Onslaught and Song of Freyalise, and steal a lot of games from people who are trying to play the more controlling type of game that tends to be successful when you're playing Dominaria Limited.
Rampaging Cyclops here for Martin Mueller. Hits the table, 4-4 for 4. Easter Glider now in play for Ingram. So, yeah, we've definitely got to look just from these first 4 cards at what his deck is trying to do. Small creatures, aggressive creatures. Speaking of aggressive creatures, Adeliza Cinderwind here for Martin Mueller, the hallmark card of the blue-red deck, coming down Hasty 2 and Naban, Dean of Iteration. Shauna Sisse's Legacy here for Ingram. A fabulous deck, a fabulous card when you're going wide.
And Peter actually has 2 copies of Shauna
nice.
in his green-white deck here.
Green-white able to do that with cards like Sapperling Migration, even a card like Sergeant at Arms.
And Peter also has Shalai, Voice of Plenty. So,
ooh,
a pretty nice team draft deck here.
Seal Away here is going to take care of the Cyclops from Mueller. So Ingram still got some pressure in the air. Adeliz does have flying, however, and I see a Sphinx hiding out in Mueller's hand.
The Sphinx, obviously quite strong in this spot. It flies, has enough power and toughness to match up well against Peter's entire board.
There we go. Cloud Reader Sphinx will scry 2. See what we want to do with those 2 cards.
It looked like he had a land and a Fervent Strike. I see a turtle in his hand, so he may want to keep the land for an opportunity to play that, but that's not great when your opponent has multiple flyers on the battlefield. He also has multiple flyers of his own, however.
All right, so we'll bottom one, top one here for Martin Mueller. See what he chose. Next turn. And it looks like he wants to be aggressive here. Adeli is getting in. Knock Ingram down to 12. Might as well got that Sphinx back to block. You can see Ingram there getting a little help from his teammate on the decision.
Ingram with a few pump spells in his deck.
Adamant Will, one that I see played probably more than any.
And if he attacks with just the glider, then that's a pretty big sign that Adamant Will is precisely what he has.
We're going to play Call the Cavalry here for Ingram. Get 2/2 knights. Pump up our Shauna. Big enough to attack. Into the Cloud Reader Sphinx, and that's exactly what he does. In she comes for 4. Martin Mueller down to 5.
Yeah, Shauna's additional text comes in quite handy in this limited format. Academy Journey Mage. It's the type of card that, oftentimes would be very good against Shauna, but just doesn't work.
Divination for Mueller. Draws 2. Trigger on the Adelis there. Keldon Overseer. No kicker. Passes the turn back to Ingram. Adventurous Impulse. Let's take a look at the top 3.
And I see the Adamant Will is one of those 3, so that card not in Ingram's hand. You won't be playing with that this game.
All right, we're going to take an Untamed Kavu here. That's a good one. Banalish Honor Guard hits the table for Ingram and swing it in. Martin Mueller's life total down to 4. Shauna 6 power. Toughness currently.
And Peter recognizing Martin's tapped out. Yes, Martin has some decent blocks here, but Martin's going to have to throw something away in front of that Shauna at the very least, so the blocks won't be that great. It's at least just going to be a trade-off here.
And this is a really important lesson as you're kind of advancing in your Magic career here. Your attacks not technically being all stellar, but attacking anyway to force your opponent's life total down, even if he was higher than potentially just 4. Mueller's going to drop to 1 there after that attack.
Yeah, and Peter left with 4 bodies on the table against Martin's 1.
And Martin is going to scoop him up. Peter Ingram takes down game number 1 versus Martin Mueller here in our semifinals on table C. No other game results in yet from tables A or B yet.
I like Peter's deck a lot. Really powerful green-white deck here.
Does he have anything special besides those 2 Shaunas?
Yeah, so he also has Shalai, Voice of Plenty.
Oh, yeah, you
which
mentioned
seems
that.
absurd in his deck. He has Urza's Ruinous Blast.
Oh, I love
which
it.
also seems quite exciting. Danitha.
Let's check in here on table B. Petter Sahurik versus Brian Bronduin. And BBD with the only creatures in play. Couple of knights in his black-white deck. Arvad the Cursed. He's got 2 short swords going on.
That Arvad, a very impressive body here. Brian Bronduin at a comfortable 37.
Lifelink on the Arvad there, doing some work. Petter's down to 6.
Oh, actually, so it seems that the life totals may be wrong here.
Okay.
Beginning, yeah. I just got a note from the people who do the technical side of things.
All
so
right,
we'll get those fixed for you when we can.
It is a time walk match, so we're just going to have to wait it out. Maybe he's not quite that high in life. Not exactly sure. Keldon Raider here will rummage away a swamp. Result from Table A, Brad Nelson up a game over Andrew Tenjum.
Keldon Raider, a card that has actually impressed me quite a bit this weekend. Coming into the weekend, I was not very happy with the card. I felt like it traded down too often. There are too many cards that cost 3 that match up very well against it, particularly Deathbloom Thallid. But I've seen it smooth out a lot of draws and provide the right kind of aggression for a number of different decks in this limited format.
I agree. Card is better than it looks, I think. BBD here lending the swords to this knight token, who is going to attack into the Keldon Raider. Haven't seen a whole lot of strictly black-red decks, and in fact, I've never drafted one yet in this set, but we've saw Corey Burkhart earlier today playing just an excellent one, which might be one of my favorite decks of the whole weekend.
Same. I mean, when you get to watch somebody play with a pair of Demon Lord Bells and Lock, some exciting stuff.
Thing. Short swords back on Arvad the Cursed here for BBD. Back over to Petter's turn. Here in our semifinals. This is our time walk match, so we'll be headed to our finals. After this, we're going to team draft again.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that we get to have 2 drafts in the top 4.
I love it.
Team drafts really are the best kind of Magic.
All right, let's head back to Table C. Peter Ingram versus Martin Mueller once again. The green-white aggressive deck from Ingram versus blue-red Wizards from Martin Mueller. Lots of good cards in Ingram's deck. Looks more like just a plain old draft deck than a team draft deck. And the Bond Dean of Iteration in play for Mueller. Danitha on the table for Ingram, and here's a get to Lava Runner to join the team for Mueller.
Danitha matching up very well against this board.
Lava Runner is getting pumped up, I believe, from what's going on in Mueller's graveyard. Syncopate here. Takes down Baird, Steward of Argive. Into exile with you. Nice, a Tempest Djinn here from Mueller. Providing an excellent clock in the air. Shalai, Voice of Plenty, though, from Ingram, which was a card we were excited to see in play. See if he can't make the most of it. All right, get to Journey Mage here from Mueller. Will ding Ingram for 2. Keldon Warcaller, just a 2/2 for 2 here. And Urza's Ruinous Blast!
Oh my goodness.
Wipes almost everything off of Martin Mueller's side of the battlefield except for Naban. Peter Ingram gets to keep everything, Shalai and Danitha. Wow, that was great. Martin Mueller just has to play land and pass the turn back, 1 card in hand.
Yeah, that was incredible.
In comes the team here for Ingram. Martin Mueller takes it. Baloth here, Sarah Disciple, back over to Mueller.
Yeah, now I imagine, ooh, okay.
Well, that's a pretty good one. Zahid Djinn of the Lamp here for Mueller. It's going to shut things down a bit if Ingram doesn't have some removal.
Yeah, Peter may be content to sit back and start activating the Shalai Voice of Plenty.
Oh, I love putting counters on creatures.
Oh, it's just the best. We've talked a lot about mana sinks in this format. Shalai, a pretty nice mana sink.
Of course, July, more abilities. You planeswalkers you control and other creatures you control have hexproof as well. So not only are they huge, they're hexproof. So you've got to deal with Shalai if you want to win.
Yeah, the hexproof clause on Shalai is kind of funny because it's very rare that you have a creature they'd rather kill than the Shalai.
Right. So Brad Nelson, BBD, currently both up a game. Peter Ingram up a game over Mueller, and things are looking pretty good for him right now. Naban here contemplating the chump. Zahid in front of Danitha. Mueller rethinking blocks there. Cloud Reader Sphinx in hand, I did notice.
And I believe that an activation here would win Peter the game.
All right, it looks like he's going for it. And there is the handshake. Peter Ingram, the first match win here of this semifinals over Martin Mueller, 2-0. But the rest of his team does have some work to do, as Brad Nelson and Brian Braun-Duin are both currently up a game in their matches. Let's head to Table A. Andrew Tenjum, Brad Nelson. Brad up a game playing white-blue. Taking a look at what he's got going on. Wrath Capuchin, Pegasus Courser on the table. Got a Partic Wanderer.
So the Helm of the Host there at the top of the table.
Oh, a Helm of the Host.
Is pretty exciting on the Sap Herd. It's going to produce lots of Saprlings and lots of Sap Herds to go with those Saprlings.
All right, yeah. Helm of the Host for Tenjum in play. Tons of we've got potential of tons of Saprlings because it's on Yavimaya Sap Herd. Krosan Druid in play as well.
Andrew, though, no answer to Wrath Capuchin right now.
Helm of the Host, one of the cards you never, ever want to play against. And why sort of disenchant and artifact removal is so important in this set.
A Daring Archaeologist. It's a card that I've been very happy with when it's
great.
in my deck.
Yeah.
Andrew may have missed trigger, or he may just be waiting for a token.
All right, let's take a look at our life totals here. Brad Nelson, 17. Andrew Tenjum, 6. You talked about that, Raph. It is still a threat, despite that Helm of the Host.
Excuse me, yeah, the Helm actually creates a token at the beginning of combat, I believe.
Okay,
so they're making new tokens now.
Custom token there. Oh, why not have your teammates player token?
That works.
That's better right there.
Yeah. And the token makes a token.
I love it. Another Petter on the table, another Saprling. Land drop here for Tenjum.
Yeah, looking for an answer to this flyer now. Definitely has the ground game won at this point.
Remember, this is our second semifinal that we've watched. Paulo Vito Damadurosa, Era Froelich, and Ben Stork's team won our other semifinal, so whoever wins out of these two teams will be playing them in the finals. Going to team draft yet again.
Andrew has a pair of Ancient Animus, which don't do it right now, but also has a single copy of Mammoth Spider, and those are really his only ways to deal with flyers.
Here's a Torgar. So are we going to dock Brad Nelson life or put ourselves back up to 10?
It's interesting. I imagine he's going to put himself back to 10. I think that works out better in the race math here. Raph is attacking for 3 a turn in the air. That's 4 attacks.
Sure enough, back up to 10, and there's that Ancient Animus you talked about, Torgar on Raph. Brad has a response. Adamant Will. Raph is indestructible. But Torgar does get that counter, by the way.
Yeah, Brad now needs another 2 attacks on top of what he initially needed to take this game in the air.
I feel like Brad just always has something. He just always has it. He had the Adamant Will. You know, he's got whatever card he needs at any given moment. That's just like costs not a lot and is able to kind of turn the tide of the trick that the opponent's trying to pull.
He's always got the in bolus's clutches.
Not even, just like a vicious offering or something, you know.
It's always the instant that he has.
Raph caption in the air here. Tenjin will fall to 7. No wins yet for Tenjin or Sahurek, but a match win for Peter Ingram. Brad Nelson, Brian Braun doing both up a game in their match. I have a question for you, JVL. What if this Helm of the Host goes on Torgar?
Well, that just seems very exciting.
Indeed, and I think that's exactly where it's going.
So now Andrew can reset his life total back to 10 every single turn here.
Because when it enters the battlefield, up to one target player's life total becomes half their starting life total rounded down. So yeah, you can just keep resetting forever.
This is awesome.
No way. Oh, I love it. Forget sap herds. Get out of here. We're going to become immortal.
Immortality seems pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
That's cool. I haven't ever seen this come up yet.
We just got to watch a Valduck deck. Then we got to see like this interesting green-white deck out of Peter Ingram just crush Martin.
All right, Torgar copy coming into play here for Andrew. Life total reset to 10, and now it's getting in there. It seems like every time we cover something in Dominaria, we see something new and cool happening that we've never seen before. Guardians of Koilos here able to be flashed in thanks to Raph. And we're going to get a counter on our Daring Archaeologist as well. We'll trade with the Torgar token.
Brad, incentivized to keep it attacking in the air. Doesn't want Andrew to aim the trigger at him, putting him down to 10 here.
And he needs to get that token off the table just because it's like, if I draw some way to be able to deal with that helm, I don't want 2 Torgars hanging around.
It doesn't look like Brad has much in the way of cards that deal with the helm, at least here for game 1.
Helm of the Host, one of the cards that I had to kind of double check and reread when I first saw it. Oh yeah, the tokens. They're not exiled. They stick around.
And this is a format that's slow enough that the helm is really just backbreaking. The kind of card that you probably would rarely make your deck in Ixalan draft.
Too fast.
Yeah. Here, it's incredible. I first picked it.
All right, Raph here still attacking. In the air, in for 3. Doing the dance we've been doing for the last few turns here. And we've got a dub. These Guardians of Koilos, now Knights of Koilos. And pass the turn back over to Tenjum, who is at 7 once again, but we know as soon as combat starts, the life total will be buffed up to 10.
Brad does have a copy of In Bolas' Clutches, which he could use to steal the helm.
Another land for turn here for Tenjum. Turns them all sideways. We're going to kick this Baloth Gorger. It's huge.
I thought we were going to get something much more exciting.
I know.
A 7/7's pretty good, though.
Okay, Tetsuko here for Nelson. So that and the Knight of New Benalia, unblockable. So that's 4 a turn. Raph is 3 in the air.
If Brad can find a way to dish an additional 3 damage, then he can sneak in for victory here. Of course, things not looking good at all. Andrew Tenjum firmly in the driver's seat here. At the helm, if you will.
Nice. Okay, so Tetsuko making that Knight of New Benalia unblockable, gets in for 3. Once again, Tenjum's life goes down to 7. Coldwater Snapper the play here from Nelson. Back over to Tenjum. The old 7 to 10 dance here. I'm sure will soon be coming up with Torgar. And it's kind of like Bolas' Clutches are bust, I think, a little bit here for Nelson, unless he managed to find a pump spell. Dark Bargain for Tenjum will send him down to 5. Takes a look at the top 3. Gets to put 2 in his hand, 1 in the yard. 4 is down. Torgar token, number 2 for Tenjum.
It's a lot of power on Tenjum's side of the table here.
All right, resetting back to 10 once again. And it's going to be the Gorger on the attack here. Just a chump block there from Brad Nelson. Both players get to draw from the Golem block. Land drop for Tenjum. What will be the follow-up? Conning up potential damage on Nelson's side of the table. Llanowar Elves and another Baloth Gorger. So yeah, power and toughness abounding on Andrew Tenjum's side of the table. We now have a couple of Torgars. Over to Nelson. Divination, digging for an answer here.
Seeking some way to win.
I've got to say, Brad's done a pretty good job at surviving this far with this active Helm of the Host in play for so long.
Yeah, Helm pumping out gigantic creatures.
Sarah Disciple for Nelson is all he's able to assemble so far this turn. Over to Tenjum.
If Brad can get this turn back without dying, oh,
All right.
unlikely that'll happen now.
Eldest Reborn here. Brad Nelson's going to sacrifice the Sarah Disciple. And we are counting up damage here on Tenjum's side of the board, counting up blockers on Nelson's side of the table. Are we going to see an all-out attack here? Nelson on 17 life. We could, though, chop it down to 10 if we wanted when that Torgar comes back in at the beginning of combat. And we will, as Tenjum's life total didn't change last turn. No attack from Brad as he usually had.
Yes, this is certainly the turn where Andrew is going to be setting Brad's life total down to 10. Unless, of course, he uses more Dark Bargain, things of that nature.
So if you like grindy matches, this one fits the bill. All right, Torgar token number 3 from Helm of the Host. See if it's just going to be another very conservative attack here from Tenjum. Or not.
Yeah, if Tenjum just attacks with everything, Brad's going to have to block all the 7/7s, and he'd still be taking lethal if Andrew chose to target Brad with the trigger.
All right, so the 3 Torgars hit the red zone. Baloth Gorger as well. Coldwater Snapper in front of the kicked Gorger. Knight of New Benalia in front of one of the Torgars. All right, so Snapper down, Knight down for Nelson. Takes a million. Back over to Brad, whose life total is currently 3. Arcane Flight
Oh my goodness!
on the Guardians of Koilos. Attacks in. Raph gets in the air as well. Tetsuko is unblockable. What is the last card in Tenjum's hand? And there is the handshake. Brad Nelson gets it done. 2-0 over Andrew Tenjum. Wow. Arcane Flight just sitting in hand for Nelson. Slams it down. Is able to get it done. Just incredible.
Oh man, that was absurd.
We are all tied up here in the semifinals. It's going to come down to this match here. Brian Bronduin versus Petr Sahurik. And BBD currently up a game. So everybody rushing to join their teammates here to help them win this game. Let's take a look at what's going on. Brian Bronduin running a black-white deck. Sanctum Spirit currently in play with 2 short swords, a Pegasus Courser as well. And that Spirit has lifelink. Get 2 Chroniclers in play there for Petr. Deathboom Thalid and a Keldon Raider.
Andrew, perhaps a bit conservative in that last game. Had he attacked with everything, had Brad blocked all the 7/7s, Brad would have taken, I believe, 13.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And he got his life total set down to 10. So, you know, he had an opportunity there to go for an all-out attack. He made the conservative play, and then Brad drew Arcane Flight, as Brads often do.
Brad Nelson always has it when he needs it. As we said, dark bargain here for Petr. Well, he's getting at least 1 land in his hand.
This game looks as if it's been going on for quite some time.
Yes, Petr's graveyard very full. Creatures fanned out like he's playing Dredge.
Multiple dark bargains there in the yard.
I love it.
Kind of polar opposite kind of plans for decks. Brian with a pair of short swords. Petter with a pair of dark bargains there in the yard. Petter working with a lot more tools. Brian just hoping that his tools are harder to deal with.
Sanctum Spirit's lifelink, pretty important, and down it goes to Vicious Offering. Indestructible won't save you from -2, -2.
And Vicious Offering matching up very well against that spirit.
Call the Cavalry for Brian. Pair of 2/2 knights. This is the deciding match here in the semi. BBD up a game. Whoever wins, either of these teams will face the team of Eric Froelich, Ben Stark, and Paulo Vito Damagerosa. Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame.
Brian here with a decision of whether or not to put a short sword on each or both short swords on one of his tokens right now.
Okay, looks like we're going to suit up one apiece here for Brian. Vicious Offering, though, takes down one of those knights. So we're just going to move the other short sword onto the other knight. 4/4, a 4/4 there for Brian Braun-Duin. What's better than one sword for a knight? Why two, of course. Pegasus Courser on the table as well. Threatens to do some damage in the air if he wants to. But we've got some power on the table here from Petter that he needs to worry about.
Yeah, Brian's life total dwindling quite a bit. Brian is tapped out, but I believe at this stage of the game, when you're down to 9, your opponent's at 12, it's very likely we'll see him just block the Thallid.
And block the Thallid he does. We're going to get a Sapperling token there for Petter. Keldon Raider and the Chronicler managed to get in, and BBD's life total falls to 4. Goblin Chain Whirler here will finish off that knight. Oh, and a Fire Fist Adept takes down the Pegasus Courser. BBD's creatures clear off the board.
That Pegasus had the 1 damage from the Chain Whirler and then another 2 damage from the Adept.
Nice.
Adept teaming up with Chain Whirler there.
Excellent
to
turn
get the flyer
there
off
for
the
Petter.
table.
Yeah, and BBD packs him in. Petter. So Hurrick tying things up here in this match versus Brian Braun-Duin. So we're going to get a game 3 here. How many times has this happened today? Down to game 3 of our 3rd table.
100% of the time?
It's been crazy.
I think it has been every single time.
Hey, you know, we like to give you the most exciting Magic possible, so no big deal. Like I said, whoever wins this is going to go on to play PVDDR, Ifro, and Stark coming up in our finals, and we are going to be team drafting yet again. It was pretty cool to watch the first one. It's a unique format that we don't get to see on camera a whole lot, so excited to see what happens again in the
these team drafts. The one that has impressed me most is Peter Ingram's.
Yes, green-white aggro, and
Yeah.
he managed to 2-0 Martin Mueller with it.
Yeah, very quickly. Brad Nelson's deck looked very weak. He was able to squeak out a win.
All right, so we're going to
Picked
try and
his
fast
spots
forward
well.
here through some of the shuffling and the mulligans, because this is Time Walk previously recorded. All right, whoever wins this single game will advance to the finals. All right, Brian Braun-Duin taking a mulligan here. Anything spicy in BBD's deck that we can kind of keep our eye out for?
He's playing Healing Grace.
Well, that's spicy in the bad way, I suppose.
Yeah, no, he is playing one copy of Healing Grace, but against an opponent that's playing damage spells, it's not the worst thing you could ask for. He has 3 copies of Vicious Offering, which is quite spicy. He has Siege Gang Commander, but he's unable to play it. He's not playing red.
All right, so that's a card he potentially hated away from the other team.
Yeah, nothing of particular power level here.
Brian Braun happy with this hand, scries to the bottom, and we are off to the races here. Petter kicking things off with a Mountain of Plains for BBD. We did see Healing Grace be a blowout earlier today, believe it or not. Get to Chronicler for Sahurik. And Benolosh Honor Guard for Brian.
Yeah, Petter's deck seems quite strong. He has 4 copies of Get to Chronicler there. He has plenty of removal spells, including a pair of Vicious Offering here. He has a copy of Soul Salvage, which combos very nicely with the fact that he has 4 copies of Get to Chronicler. You can return Soul Salvage back to your hand, then use your Get to Chronicler, then just chain it.
Stronghold Confessor here for Petter. Sanctum Spirit for Brian. Gets indestructible if he discards Historic card. Fire Fist Adept here is going to shoot down the Honor Guard and enable an attack here from the Confessor. Menace, so able to get in for 3. Knocking Brian down to 17. Spirit gets in, hits the red zone. Does have lifelink, remember. So right back up to 20. We're going to swap life totals there. Guardians of Koilos here for Brian, 4/4 body.
And that 4/4 matching up very well against Petter's current board.
Vicious Offering at least 1 in hand here for Petter. Stronghold Confessor, though, is going to get in for another 3. Brian falls once again to 17, and there we see the Offering used to take down the Sanctum Spirit. No discard, because it doesn't matter. Gives it -2/-2.
Yeah, it's just it's the removal spell that lines up the absolute best against that card.
Call the Cavalry here from Brian. We'll add a couple of knights to the board. Back over to Petter. Keldon Raider pulled to the front of his hand. We'll see if that's what he wants to play this turn. In fact, it is. Let's discard and draw. Goblin Chain Whirler hits the bin. Wow. That makes me a little nervous if I'm Brian.
Yes, I imagine Brian is shaking in his boots, if you will. He's a world champion. He's lost matches before, but when your opponent has to rummage away a Goblin Chain Whirler for a random card, it's not usually a good sign for you over the long haul.
Sanctum Spirit number 2 here for Brian. And it looks like we are going to get into the action here from Petter. Stronghold Confessor, Keldon Raider, and the Fire Fist Adept into the red zone. 2 mana up for BBD. Could signify something like an Adamant Will. Any number of tricks in this format. Healing Grace, for instance.
Could very well be a Healing Grace.
Brian lining up blocks. Looks like we are considering triple blocking the Stronghold Confessor Sanctum Spirit there on the Keldon Raider.
Petter ordering his blockers here.
Okay, some trades there.
It's another chain whirler. Oh, a soul salvage.
Soul salvage. Okay, so we see why Petter was fine with discarding that chain whirler. He's going to get it right back. And down it comes, and there we see those attacks as well. Is going to finish off those Guardians of Koilos. Whipping its chain around, doing one to everything when it comes on in.
And that was very tight play there from Petter. You know, we were talking about how scary it must have been to be in Brian's shoes to see that chain whirler hit the graveyard. But Petter was simply doing that so that he could generate more card advantage with that soul salvage.
I think Petter's deck's really cool. All these soul salvages and vicious offerings and the like with Get 2 Chroniclers.
Yeah, lots of card advantage in his deck also. A pair of Dark Bargains along with 4 Get 2 Chroniclers and a decent amount of removal. Seems like a great deck. On the top end, he even has Josu Vess.
Another Call the Cavalry here for BBD. He's got quite the cavalry as from its stands. Mono Knights on his side of the table. Now all we need is a History of Benalia. Firefist Adept attacks in here for Petter.
And Petter trying to trade away his creatures. I think the plan here is to trade them away, then use a Get 2 Chronicler to get back the Soul Salvage, and kind of just create a never-ending chain of card advantage that Brian just gets completely buried under.
Keldon Raider here will rummage away a mountain for Petter. The Juggernaut joins the team here for Brian Braun-Duin, and a short sword picked up by a knight.
Brian's setting up an attack of his own. I imagine we're going to see him start getting in on the following turn. I mean, he has to attack with the Juggernaut. Lots of 3 toughness on the other side of the table.
And first strike.
Yeah, matching up very well against his all of his 2/2 knights.
Firefist Adept attacking again. Looks like we're going to attempt a trade here from Brian, and it's good. Down goes the knight wearing the short sword. Oh, Feral Abomination here from Petter. 5/5 Death Toucher. The Juggernaut's going to pick up the short sword. Keldon Raider will block and trade. Pegasus Courser here for Brian Braun-Duin. Definitely a card he was looking for if he wants to kind of turn the tables and ever start attacking Petter.
Yeah, Pegasus Courser, a great card at getting through in the air for obvious reasons. We've talked over and over about the ground getting gummed up in these games, and the Courser is a great way to throw your biggest body directly at your opponent's face.
Feral Abomination getting in, swinging 4/5. And we're going to do a little trading here, a double block from Brian Braun-Duin with those 2 knights and one wearing the short sword. We'll take down the Abomination. Get 2 Chronicler here, kicked from Petter, and we're getting just a better look here at what his deck wants to do.
And it got back that Soul Salvage, and now he's been able to trade off those creatures. We see the Adept in his graveyard. That essentially is rebuying him a removal spell and an additional threat.
It's great.
It's just a never-ending stream. And now the major problem, too, is that Brian can never really attack into a Get 2 Chronicler and can never block a Get 2 Chronicler either, because if he does so, then it sets up Petter with a loop wherein he can return the Get 2 Chronicler with the Soul Salvage that can then get the Soul Salvage back.
Oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, it's just disgusting.
Pegasus Courser here hits the air wearing that short sword. And here we go, Soul Salvage. Gets back the Feral Abomination and the Firefist Adept, as you said. Adept comes down, shoots the Benalish Honor Guard. Enables an attack here. Petter in for 4. Brian Braun down to 9. Back over to BBD. What can he do? This is the deciding game here in this matchup in our semifinals. And Petter's deck is sweet.
Yeah, Petter's deck is the deck that I want to play with in 100% of my drafts. If I can be soul salvaging, get 2 Chroniclers, I'm a happy Jake.
All right, well, we're still going to attack here. Knight goes flying into the air. Excavation Elephant is the play for Brian Braun, and so Petter drops down to 9 as well. That Elephant's a good blocker.
Yeah, and Brian doing his best here. Continue applying pressure in the air.
Vicious offering, though, with the sacrifice of a Get-To Chronicler is good enough to take it down in an all-out swing here from Petter. For 7, Knight here jumps in front of the Chronicler to save himself some damage. Feral Abomination back from the dead. Ready to death touch again here from Petter. Brian Braun down to 3.
I like that Petter turned the corner also once he realized that he had, generated such a massive advantage. He was just like, okay, I'm just going to start winning now. He saw his teammate, Andrew Tenjum, be a little bit too precarious and, as a result, lose to a worse deck in the hands of Brad Nelson, and he's not going to make the same mistake. Oh my
how about
goodness.
This? A kicked Josu Vess, and in comes the team from Petter Sahurek. Well, when you're going to do it, why not do it in style? Unbelievable. And there is the handshake. Wow, what a way to end this game, end the match. Tenjum, Sahurek, and Ingram are moving on to the finals.
He did that for us.
That was
He didn't need to
excellent.
kick that Josu Vess, but he knew that we needed him to kick that Josu Vess.
That's the second Josu Vess kicked we've seen on camera this weekend. Pretty excellent stuff there. So finals coming up on the way. That team is going to play PVDDR, Eric Froelich, and Ben Stark. Take a look at your top 4 bracket. There it is. Our final is coming up, and we are going to team draft again. Going to see a couple of drafts. Pretty excited because team draft, very unique format. Saw some cool drafts last time, and then you get to see the decks in action, which I think is really neat as well. See how they play out after the draft. Whew!
One of the things that's interesting, too, about team draft is that you find yourself in situations where you're drafting to beat the cards you see because it's such a small table.
Right.
And once people really learn formats a lot, it can be one of the most cerebral ways to play Magic.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it. Finals coming up. Don't go anywhere.